Hi and welcome to The Print. My name is Karanjeet Kaur. I'm a journalist and an editor. Let's talk today about the anti-Sikh riots of 1984 and how a new book looks at the stories of women affected by the violence. A few weeks ago, we silently marked another 31st October. 40 years since organized mobs turned Delhi streets into killing fields against the Sikh community. For those who survived the anti-Sikh pogrom of 1984, the date is less an anniversary and more a wound that is scratched annually and then hurriedly bandaged again. It is a reminder of how decisively the ground beneath your home can shift, how neighbors can turn into vultures, and how a city built on the love, labor, and enterprise of a post-partition refugee community can firmly turn against them. In Delhi's collective conscience, it's become almost customary to treat 1984 as a closed chapter. But for any Sikh family that lived through those days, survival taught lessons that no one should have to learn. For those who lost their fathers, brothers, and sons to the violence, there has been no moving forward. I was only a few months old when mobs began to roam the capital streets, armed with lists identifying Sikh houses. I was too young to remember anything except through stories that were rarely told. For my family, one particular object has come to represent everything about those days. A suitcase. My mother had it ready with 2 sterilized feeding bottles, a set of clothes, nappies, and an empty section carefully measured to hold 2 tiny bodies of me and my cousin. She slept in her salwar kameez during those days, eliminating even the few minutes it might take to change if the mob came to our door. It was a meticulous escape plan that mercifully we never had to execute. The privilege of our address saved us, but thousands of others weren't so fortunate. That's the thing about systematic violence. It follows the familiar geography of class and power, choosing its victims with administrative precision. These private strategies of survival have been carried quietly for decades by the Sikh community in Delhi and other parts of North India. It's this unspoken history that Sanam Sutirat Wazir attempts to tap into in his remarkable book, The Cause of 1984, The Untold, Unheard Stories of Sikh Women. The book was published earlier this year by HarperCollins. During a research project for Amnesty International in 2014, Wazir noticed a void in the official narratives of 1984. That is, the voices of women who had survived. Through interviews across Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, and Delhi, Wazir pieces together oral histories that had remained buried for 40 years. This decade-long labor started with the simple act of witnessing. For 7 years, Wazir sat with women who survived the carnage and what followed in its wake, until one of them told him to go ahead and ask them whatever he wanted to. The survivors connected Wazir with others like them, and he let them unspool their memories at their own pace and in their own words. What came forth were harrowing testimonies of how a few days of violence can reshape lives in ways that statistics and official reports can never capture. The book maps a landscape of trauma that extends far beyond the immediate impact of the riots. Wazir has spoken to the women of Trilokpuri who witnessed their homes being marked out for destruction, and those who saw male members of their families burned to death in a pattern that repeated across the city. Yet others were sexually assaulted for days. Wazir told me in an interview, violence always dies down. But what about the loss of childhood? What about the loss of opportunity? Had things gone according to plan, maybe one of these women could have been the Prime Minister of the country. Where are the reparations for that? The result is less a conventional historical account and more an archive of aftermath. What happens to a community when the violence ends but justice remains elusive? In the years before former Congress MP Sajjan Kumar was sentenced to life in 2018 for inciting mobs during the 1984 riots, the search for justice had been reduced to a sequence of commissions of inquiry. Meanwhile, the alienation of the community continued in big and small ways. Wazir recounts how young Sikh children were doubly traumatized. First, because they'd lost their family members in the violence, and later, when they would be taunted mercilessly in schools referred to as Sikh Kebab and fatherless children. For me, the most haunting image of that era isn't even from my own history. It is from an entry in photographer Gauri Gill's pamphlet 1984. In it, the writer Nilanjana Roy recalls a young girl found in a Trilokpuri house who stood over a pile of bodies in her own home and pleaded, "Please take me home." This kind of confusion must have felt like a repetition for so many people. For India's Sikh community, 1984 was an illustration of history folding in on itself, recreating patterns of displacement and betrayal that many had witnessed barely 4 decades prior during the partition. Among the community, the partition is commonly labeled ujada or devastation. The grammar of violence remained unchanged. The same methodical targeting and the same swift transformation of the familiar into the hostile. In conversations with Wazir, many women revealed how their bodies carried this memory of displacement. One woman told him about her grandmother, who decades after partition would religiously make 40 to 50 rotis every night before going to bed. If they had to run again, at least the family wouldn't go hungry. These contingency plans became part of the invisible inheritance of being a minority in India. 4 decades on, this inheritance of trauma remains largely unacknowledged in our public spaces, institutional memory, and even among a community that has focused on forgetting. In the subcontinent, we have a shameful history of burying survivors' voices, Wazir told me. He spoke about how similar tragedies, like the Holocaust, though separated by time and magnitude, have been preserved through museums, archives, and memorials. Our engagement with 1984, on the other hand, remains tokenistic at best. The museums in Delhi's Tilak Vihar and Gurdwara Rakabganj Sahib were a tentative first step. But where are the artifacts that tell these stories? Where is the material evidence of what happened? Perhaps that's why books like The Cause of 1984 feel so vital. In a country where forgetting is prescribed as a cure for trauma, remembering becomes an act of resistance. The Cause of 1984 didn't just lose people and possessions during the second Ujada. They continued to lose in the years of silence that followed. The stories remind us that a country's amnesia isn't natural. It's a privilege reserved for those who never had to learn the art of survival.